Texas!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 138 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, Grace, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie and EJ.
Hello.
Today, we'll be talking about 809 of 911, which is titled Sob Stories. And this is the spring premiere, and as always, we just have so much to talk about. This was a very full episode.
We're so back. Like I feel
so
good about this episode. Like I feel just like a new energy with this half of the season. So I feel like we're starting off in such a great direction, and I'm just so pleased with just where we're at. And I'm
it was
excited
a good start
for
to the second half.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I've been feeling a little bit more critical of episodes lately, so I was a little worried going into this because I was like, okay, what's going to happen? But like, other than maybe one or two things that isn't even like nitpick of the actual show, just like, oh, okay, you know, this we'll get into it. But for the most part, I just fucking loved this episode. I was in it. I was involved. I loved how we're back. As you said, we're back. We'll get into thoughts and final thoughts, of course, but we're back. And we start out with a punch. So we are in dispatch. Maddie's taking a call, and she originally thinks it's someone calling about considering self-harm. And that is how it sounds originally.
Initially,
and so she starts pinning cell towers. The guy had given her a fake name, won't tell her where he is, but she pins cell towers, but she quickly finds out that he took a woman, and she can hear screaming in the background like through a gag. So we're like, oh, this is not that at all. Okay. So Athena is dispatched, and when she gets there, there's just nobody there. It's a vacant lot. And Josh is like, are you sure you're at the right address? And if she searches it, and there's nothing to search.
Josh, you're questioning Athena.
I know, questioning like a veteran officer, not to mention a police sergeant. But, like, I kind of understand, because that happens all the time, where it's, like, they don't necessarily go to the right location, or something happens and it leads them somewhere else. So I kind of understand why he questioned it. It's like, wait, are you sure? Like, they're supposed to be here, and...
Well, it's also, like, this made me think of when the communications were down, and they were having to just go around the city, buy old maps and stuff like that, and there were, like, 3 of the same road. So they also went to a vacant lot the first time. That's what that made me think of. So
because in a lot of larger cities they have like First Avenue and then First Street, or First Avenue West and First Avenue East. And if you're not like aware, you could be on First Avenue West and be totally away from East where you needed to be. So I get it. It was just like, Josh, there's no like issues with GPS right now, and let's not question Sergeant.
I'm just gonna say I am loving like the Athena content we're getting lately. I'm not saying necessarily that we slacked in it in recent seasons or anything, but it really, I don't know. I love Athena. I'm loving seeing her get her moments, seeing her like really involved. Again, this is giving me season 2 vibes. It is giving me so many season 2 vibes. So yeah, we are in that. So again, there's nothing to search, but the caller can see them somehow. He knows that Maddie lied, that there is police there. So that did not go very well. She had lied about police being there.
Right.
So then we have Buck and Eddie like cleaning the windows in the firehouse. And Buck's talking about how Gerard Facebook requested him.
I was like,
ew,
but also like kind of funny. It's like, I'm sorry, like none of them really like him. Like, why are you requesting him? Like, do you really think you have some mutual like thing?
Right.
Well, he did take a certain fascination with Buck, and that's what that made me think. I was like, oh
yeah.
But I also love how he mentioned that like Gerard is holding up a fish and everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, good. Buck recognizes that as a number 1 red flag.
Good job, sweetie.
All right.
Good job. So Eddie is showing Buck how he found a house in El Paso, as the prime zip code is like 10 miles down the street from his parents. And he shows Buck the place, and Buck's like, it looks a little run down. He doesn't think Eddie should do it. We do know that Buck just doesn't want Eddie to go.
Right.
So there is definitely that. You can tell he is trying to be so supportive, but like he is struggling.
Yeah.
And so Eddie is like, well, this is all I can afford. I can fix it up. Plus, he already put a down payment on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so you just
He
showed
really
him
just
the
went
house.
into it.
Yeah.
Like really just did that. It's like kind of like I don't know. See, Buck is like kind of like that friend that's like he's trying to be supportive, but like it's also like he's losing his best friend. Like yes, it's not like he's never gonna talk to Eddie again or anything like that, but it's like he's trying his best, but it is like hard because like obviously we know how Buck does when people leave him. He doesn't really do well with that, and it's just like I get that, and he's trying to help the best that he can. And also, like, I get some of Buck's, like, I think he is kind of, like, concerned in the fact that he's like, oh, it's kind of run down. Eddie's like, I'll fix it up. Eddie, that is a lot of work and time and money.
Yeah.
Like, that,
Yeah.
it's like, do you really have, like, I don't know. Do you really have the money for that? Like, I get maybe you're saving some money, but it's also like a lot of people say that like with the amount of work you would have to put into, is it really that worth it? A lot of people say.
Unless you're going to turn it into a professional hobby to flip houses, it's really not to get into. Yeah.
Plus, it's like maybe that's best if like you only have a certain amount of money, but you can accumulate the money that you're gonna use to fix it up bit by bit. But it ultimately, I don't think it's that less expensive. And I will give Buck a lot of credit. And I'm gonna like talk a fair amount about Buck and his abandonment issues during this episode because I really think they're playing into it. But he is trying so hard, but he's not let himself be in his feels about it. I don't think. I don't think he's really taken the time to like help himself process that because this is big for him. But I think he jumped a little too quickly into like helping Eddie instead of letting himself feel what he needed to feel, whether that was abandonment, whether that was like a sense of hopelessness. Like, yeah, I think he just jumped a little too quickly into that. And that's not necessarily his fault. That is like skills that you acquire at some point. But it does, I think that played a version into it. But so Buck asks Eddie if he told Cap yet. And Eddie's like, no, so don't say anything to anyone. Eddie wants all his ducks to be in a row before he gives his notice. And I'm like, so my question is, did he just not plan to tell anybody, including Buck? Because Buck found out by being there and being a little bit nosy as best friends are. I am like, was Eddie just gonna tell Buck along with everyone else the second he gave his notice? Because I'm sort of getting that vibe, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it was a well thought through plan.
Yeah, I think Eddie is always come across Eddie's always come across to me like someone who is so private, but then like so he doesn't really realize when there's people around him that care. And so for him, he's just so used to, because Shannon left him, he had to do everything on his own because he didn't want to rely on his parents. And so now he's just so used to that mentality that when he wants to make a change in his life, he's not really used to telling people and like having a community around him that would care or be interested to know. And I'm sure there was a lot of hesitation and fear about what their reaction was going to be. So that maybe also played into why he wasn't going to say anything. But yeah, no, I was like, dude, I hope had things happened differently that he would have made sure Buck knew first. Because they've been so close for so long. Putting aside any of like the desires of the fandom, Eddie and Buck have been like two peas in a pod since season 2, episode 1. Like after all that little, like the bombing thing, and I'm like, it would be very chicken shit of somebody like Eddie to just totally like, yeah, no, I'm moving. I mean, I had an experience where I had to move pretty abruptly, but I still told people. And I'm like, look, this is not because I'm unhappy here. It's just financially in my job situation, this opportunity I have to take it.
Yeah. But I think Eddie, and I say this with a lot of love. We all know I love Eddie. Like that, I have adored him since season 2.
Yeah, we
But
all have.
exactly, with no like slight towards him, he
Yeah.
has a thing where he just gets a singular focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And so we all know that Christopher has been his priority, as he should be for basically all his life, especially since he became a single dad. Which as he should be, he is his first priority. He is priority over his girlfriends, over his coworkers, family, all that. Like your child is your first priority. That is how it should be. However, I think a lot of people, and Eddie does suffer from this, suffer from thinking that just because someone has to be your first priority doesn't mean they are like the only person that matters at all. And
Yeah.
I think Eddie, and we also got this when he left the 118 the first time. Because he told everyone right there. He didn't even tell Buck ahead of time. The only person he actually technically told first was Bobby because he turned in his resignation.
Yeah.
So and that was also done for Christopher, understandable, but I think it's just that thing of like he's like, oh, I'm doing this for Chris so nobody else, I don't want to say matters, but sort of. And okay, I sort of get it, but it's also not necessarily great. You can have a priority and still demonstrate care for the people in your life.
Right.
And I think Eddie just struggles with that a bit. So I don't know, it's just a little painful to be watching them go through this and to see, obviously Eddie cares so much about Chris and just wants to get down to be with him, but he's just kind of abandoning everything else in LA. So it's
Yeah,
just
he's
a little bit
definitely
difficult.
narrowed in on his fear of missing out of time with his son. And the teenagers are definitely there's a lot, and the kids are starting to slowly come into their own personality. And so I can understand why he wants to be around more, because he's having that. So he has valid like fears and desires to be with Chris, but yeah, it's just
I also I went we don't know how much time. I don't think we know how much time this has been taking place over. But it does feel like he has just absolutely gone headfirst into all of this.
It is kind of hard to say. I feel like a little time has passed, like maybe a few months, I think, but not like terribly long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so going off of the whole ducks in a row, so Buck is like, well, what other ducks do you have? And then he's like, well, Howie already signed another 1-year lease on his current place in LA. If he doesn't find someone to sublet, then he will be paying for 2 places. And who the fuck has money for that?
Right.
I don't have money for 1 place right now. What do you mean 2 places?
Yeah.
Buck offers to help Eddie sublet his place, and Eddie says, how he doesn't know what he would do without him. And yeah, that clearly leaves Buck in his feels too.
Which, yeah, I think it's very clear that Buck has been a huge help to Eddie through a lot. I mean, he introduced Carla to them, and that really helped out a lot. So I was like, definitely in that moment, I'm like, oh yeah, you recognize who's in your life, and yeah, but yeah, I have things to say later.
Oh yeah.
Oh, me too.
Same.
We all have thoughts. But now we're gonna get into this particular scene. So we get a dog rescue. So I'm just gonna say right now. Told you guys this earlier. I'm saying it right now. I did not cry during the Lone Star finale. I have not cried over the last few episodes. I was beginning to think my cry meter was broken. The second we open this scene and there is a lost dog poster, I'm tearing up.
Yeah,
you don't fuck with animals with me.
Yeah,
me
same.
too.
An animal gets brought into things. I don't care if you kill all the humans. That dog better fucking survive. So
Agreed.
Yeah, we're all dog and animal people, and I mean, we've all talked about it. Like even when the horse had to be put down, and different things in 911, like we were all sobbing messes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think we can all name that horse episode as one. We totally watched that forever. Yeah. So we see the lost dog poster, then we see that dog that was in the lost dog poster on the street, and he's just this cute little beagle.
I know, and I've had a beagle, so it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
that even hits it.
Now, at first, I was wondering if this was going to go into like the whole like the kidnapping scene. I was wondering if like this dog was going to like find a body or something like that because it kind of looked to be in like a rundown part of town.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, is this dog going to be like a witness? My poor baby.
Yeah.
But no, he's just hiding from the rain under broken furniture, and I was very sad. But so we see him get caught by animal control and be brought into the rescue. And the next thing you know, the rescue is on fire. And I will tell you right now, the second the first spark happened is when I started crying.
Yeah.
Not just getting emotional, I was flat out sobbing, going, "They better not fucking hurt these dogs."
Which
Right.
I
I
didn't
would've
think
turned the
they
episode off
would, but
right
you
there.
never know.
Right.
I was like, they're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it. But let me tell you, if one dog had died, I would have turned off the fucking episode.
Oh, same.
No, we're not doing that. But yes, so my bawling aside, so they get the 118s there, they gain all the dogs out, and of course the beagle that we saw earlier got scared and he ran off, and Buck goes after him because of course he does. Me too, Buck. And so everyone else gets out, but Buck's in there as the roof starts to give, and they're all worried, they're all wondering what happened with Buck, and he comes out with the dog.
Of course he does.
Right.
And then Hen says something along the lines of, "Here's the scare boy," and Buck says, "Sorry guys," and I was like, she was talking to the dog.
Literally same though. Same.
Well, there was that
Real.
moment where like Buck's like, yeah, the roof's going, and Bobby's like, well, then so should you.
I know,
And
like
then, but Buck's like, no, I'm getting this dog. And, oh yeah, it was so good.
same,
Yeah.
honestly.
Like that was all of us were like, we're not leaving until this dog's out. Yeah.
Well, and then when Buck
Yeah.
like took his mask off and he's like, see, I'm just a normal guy. I was like,
Oh yeah, because the dog was scared. I feel so bad for animals in these
Yeah.
kind of situations when there's a
Right.
fire and stuff
They don't know
because
what's
like
happening.
it's so scary. And I like this scene just because like it is good to like know, like it is like especially for like emergencies. Like I know you can get like people a lot of times will put like these things that light up on their windows and just in case there's a fire to be like there's a
Yeah.
dog or a
Right.
cat in the house or whatever it is so that way they
Yeah.
know, or they'll be like say how many they have in the house that way if there is ever like a fire that they know.
Yeah.
Which is definitely so important to like
Right.
prepare for too.
That's always been one of my most major fears is both of a fire and also like having a pet in there.
Yeah.
Having grown up with animals my entire life.
Yeah, same.
It's yeah. Especially like growing up with animals also in cages all my life, like whether they were caged during the night or something like that.
Yeah.
Like if you're able to get to them, at least you know where they are. But if you aren't able to get to them, they have no chance to run. So that
I
is like,
know.
I
So
hate
sad.
thinking about it. But fortunately, the rescue scene turned out okay. It looks like every dog made it out. I was like, they better live.
Right.
But yeah, so I saw it. Anyway. So then we go to Athena and Maddie going to see this missing persons detective. And Maddie thanks Athena for arranging this because she knows, what she's going to say in there might sound crazy. And Athena tells her that cops are used to crazy.
I loved
Which
this scene for so many reasons, but this totally gave me like a flashback of Lone Star when Carlos and Grace were going to see the missing persons
yes,
detective.
that's what it was
Right,
making me think
yes.
of.
Like that was what I was thinking of this whole time, and I remember talking about that. Like I posted about, I think about that, and people are like, "Oh yeah, you're so right," and I'm like, "Yep, I'm definitely gonna be doing like this is 911, this is Lone Star kind of thing," and I love it. But I
Parallels.
was totally getting the same vibes, which I love.
Yeah.
Also, like even better is like I think Lone Star, just for like points on the scene, it's like for Lone Star their scene was every person there was a POC or a queer character or both for Carlos, and everyone in this room was a woman for 911.
Yeah,
And
that is
I
so
love
cool.
seeing that.
Yeah.
And obviously Athena's black as well, so that was amazing. I was just like, yes, I love seeing diverse rooms.
Yeah.
Especially when it's all like a form of diversity. I'm like, hell yeah. So this was just, yeah. Lone Star was that for me. This was this. I loved it.
Yeah, I
So
love
Maddie
that
asked about them.
connection.
Yeah. So Maddie asks about the missing persons detective, and Athena tells her that her name is Detective Amber Raven, and she only knows her reputation, and she's like a bloodhound, tough, blunt, and she doesn't suffer fools. I'm like, oh yeah. Maddie tells Athena that she's not making her less nervous, but Athena reassures her that she's in great hands. She's supposedly found more missing kids than anyone in the past 15 years. Hell yeah. So Amber comes in and, great introductions and everything. She plays a call for them and asks Maddie if she's sure it's the same voice and they're connecting it to other possible cases. Now, I don't know if this is like obvious to everyone in the room, including all watchers, but obviously this person is a fake voice.
Yeah,
Like
it's
that they are
like,
using some sort of distorter.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just like you can only really tell it's distorted. So it's like I get it. They're both like, oh yeah, both are distorted, but like how do you not know this is a different person?
Right.
Because, there could like yes, these are so similar that could be the same person, but it also could be like a copycat. You never know.
Yeah.
If they use the same distorter, like a lot of these ones come out. And I will say that because of this, I actually anticipated the end of this episode from the get-go.
Oh yeah, me too.
Not necessarily who, but I was like, no, I know how this is gonna play out a bit, and I was for the most part correct. But I was
Yeah.
like, because it doesn't matter what gender the original person is, their voice will turn out the same. And that's what I found
Yeah.
most suspicious.
I okay, the whole episode I was on the edge of my seat where we know what's gonna happen in the end to lead us into the next episode, but I was like, I don't know how we're gonna get here, but I know since it was heavily promoted that what's gonna happen. But I was just like I don't know, at this moment I'm like, okay, this detective, like she sounds like the best thing ever, so I'm just like I'm a little suspicious of like what's going on. And I don't know, she just gave off like this vibe and like a weird vibe. And so I was just like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And also I was like waiting. It was like waiting for that moment to happen at the end of the episode with Maddie. And I'm just like, I'm waiting this whole episode being like, I know something's gonna happen, but I don't know how we're gonna get there. And it's just like that was my whole so I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen?
See, the only thing tipped me off about so I did not suspect the detective at all, I will say.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But just for the one thing struck me as odd early on, but we were so busy like in the rest of the episode that I didn't think about it. It was just the fact that she narrowed in on this guy so quick. And that did, especially the fact that, well, let me get through the rest of the scene before I talk about this, just so we're like up to date on talking about it.
Right.
So the detective has someone in mind. They can't just bring him in because she's gone after him so many times. He has complained. And she can't bring him in without hard evidence, so someone else has to go question him. And Athena's like, she's never been above a little harassment.
I
Like,
loved that
Athena.
line.
That was
Like it
so
was just
Athena.
like,
So
go
Athena.
off.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. Here is the thing that tipped me off. In the scene, she talks about how this guy is a registered sex offender and has like had a bad history with, girls and stuff like that. Here's the thing is that they also state in that same scene that none of these girls were SA'd. That none of the girls that they are looking, because they have 3 cases in front of them. None of these girls, or at least the 2 that have been found, they were killed, but they were not SA'd. I'm like, do you mean to tell me a registered sex offender is your primary thought, even though these girls don't match?
Yeah.
I was suspicious, but that also, I got so caught up in the rest of the episode that I forgot about it till the end. I was like, I knew it.
Yeah, it just something rubbed me the wrong way. And you're right, like her narrowing in on this one person. Like I get it if she feels like there's a serial killer out there and like she's like keeping an eye on people. But and then of course her say I knew like she was trying to get Athena to do something because it's like, well, I've already tried so many times to get him put away, but like, so you were purposely like stringing her on enough. Like Athena, she's like, oh well, I'm not above a little harassment. We know Athena, so of
She
course,
wanted somebody to do her dirty work, basically.
exactly. Yeah, she wanted somebody to do her dirty work.
Yeah.
I'm very curious if they're gonna dive into this whole thing. So obviously at some point they're gonna start suspecting who it is. I'm wondering if we're gonna get a little bit of elaboration on this whole thing, if she was even telling the truth. Because I'm
Yeah.
wondering maybe I don't know. We can continue speculating further at the end of the episode, but I was just like, that was the thing that tipped me off, and that is because I've watched so much Criminal Minds. That I was
Yeah.
like, that doesn't fit.
I
That doesn't.
I
This was giving me Criminal Minds vibe. I'm just saying.
yeah, I don't know. Like I get that like detectives and people like if somebody has if they've suspected people in the past for crimes, I get that they have like a list of people that like I don't know, this fits, like this happened. I get that that's a thing. So like that didn't really throw me
Mhm.
off. Like I didn't think it was really suspicious until like later, but even then like I was just like and also people had been predicting that the person that's gonna take Maddie was a woman and then like articles
I
came
brought it up
out.
last time.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
talked about it last time, and then I told you guys about like the article that like basically said like about the man color and like different things. And so I was like, wait, so is that just a crazy fan theory? Because you really not no never know. There's always like these fan theories. And like I'm so impressed with people that like people are just put out these theories and then it ends up being right. But it's just one of those things. Sometimes people are very wrong, but then sometimes they get it right. And so
I
I was
would.
just like, wait, is this actually gonna happen? And then the end of the episode, I'll tell you guys later what I was just like thinking.
I'm just saying, like, a fun example of like a crazy fan theory coming true is like there's this one fan. I don't remember how long they predicted this, but they actually threw out a wild theory that Buck and Tommy would get together one day, and then it happened.
I
Yeah,
love it though.
And they were like, wait, what?
right.
So there was one fan, I don't remember who they are, but I know they're on Tumblr. And they were like, oh yeah, I predict, and they actually did. So
Yeah.
that's why I love fandoms, is because there are so many different minds that
I
come up
mean,
with such different ideas.
I mean, by the time we get to the end of the episode, we've got more fan theories that'll have totally like next thing you know.
I know, I
Wow.
And
know.
God,
I was like, gee, that just came out of fan fiction. I told my friend because she hadn't watched the
yeah,
episode yet. I said, well, let's just say that the ending of the episode totally came out.
yeah,
She's like, really? And I was like, yeah.
yeah. It's what I loved about the end of the we keep referencing the ending before we get there, but it's because it was so good. Because what I loved about it was the fact that I went, oh my God, I should have known. Like how did I not predict this?
I know, I
Uh,
know. I'll have to
it was
tell
like in
you guys
hindsight.
my whole reaction at the end. Of course, record or film my reactions, so it's honestly
Naturally.
funny. I'll have to post it elsewhere too, because it was so like looking back now, I think it's funny.
Smart. Yeah. Okay, well let's keep moving then. So then we get oh boy. Okay. So now we get into the scene where Eddie is getting ready to meet the people who may sublet his place.
Right.
And these people are certainly interesting.
Yeah.
And Buck's trying to be helpful. He really is. I love Buck. He just sometimes says the first thing that comes to his mind.
I can relate. That's literally me. Sometimes I'm like,
Uh,
shut up.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I'll say shit and be like, wait, what? That wasn't me.
I'd be like, why did I say that? Oh my God.
Yeah, and usually I'm so careful about thinking before I speak usually. And be very measured because whenever I do that, it gets me into trouble.
Yep, it tends to do that.
But like Buck being like, oh, it's not a chef's kitchen, and the dude is a chef.
That was so funny.
And that was and then Buck telling the story about the guy down the street who apparently had a meth lab.
It was such a funny
Listen,
story.
the street that I'm on, there was a drug dealer, so like
there's also
Yeah.
it happens.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was this is like a while ago, like maybe 10, 15 years ago in the town I live in, where somebody I don't remember where it was, somewhere in my town, somebody had a meth lab that basically blew up.
Oops. Well,
So, uh,
oopsie.
Um, it is like I understand like the people being like you don't want to live in a neighborhood, especially since they had kids, that maybe would have been had drugs, but honestly, it's like it surprises you the people you meet and stuff. So you don't even know. Like it could be like the nice nanny a block over that's like dealing whatever out of her house. You never know people is my point.
Right. Yeah. There's always
Exactly. And we've seen multiple like instances of this within this show, but like also others. In my street there was a drug bust like a couple of years before we moved in. And I'm pretty sure I have like just some suspicious stuff I've seen as recently as like a couple of years ago. I am pretty sure I have seen drug exchanges because I've just seen some very fishy stuff. But it's like I'm not necessarily in an unsafe place, but you never know. Just keep your nose out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I would want to know if I had kids and I was moving into a place where there was someone that did that. Um, so I don't know. Like I can't necessarily fault Buck, but that's also like no, that's also not helpful.
Right.
So Buck is talking. He's just trying to screw things up so Eddie doesn't leave. Um, but Eddie tells Buck to leave, but before he does, Buck eavesdrops. I will say that like it isn't as intentional as Eddie like presumes it to be. He literally just like
Yeah.
forgot like his wallet or his phone or something like that and went
Right,
back into the
yeah.
kitchen. And I'll be real, like I will say this as someone who does eavesdrop sometimes, not often intentionally, but I like the instances that we heard of the
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah, I would stop and listen to. Just saying.
Well, yeah, and yeah, he legitimately walked out the back door with realizing he didn't have his phone. So there was a reason why he went back in. And I know there was a lot of people that were upset because of what Eddie said. And it's like, we know that Abuela is in Texas. I don't think she's come back. So she's gone. So family wise, aside from the 118, which includes Buck, he doesn't have any ties to California anymore because most of his family is now in Texas. So I get why he said that, but he didn't know Buck was in the room, or he would have clarified it differently.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Because he explained,
Yeah.
to the next people that he has no ties in LA. That's why he's going back to Texas. And here's the thing, is that I do understand why he said that.
Yeah.
I do. But I also am not upset at Buck for being upset about it. Because
Oh,
I
for sure.
also would be hurt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like if my best friend was like, oh yeah, I have no more ties to this place. I am just leaving. Like I don't give a shit about anybody here. I'm like, excuse me, what the fuck about me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're my best friend. We've been best friends for years. The fuck you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of like the heat of the moment thing. It's kind of like the things you say when you don't think anybody that you care about is listening, or he wasn't expecting Buck to be there. Honestly, they played like the first time I watched this, they played this so well. I'm like, why is Buck going back in? And then obviously the second time around, I realized that he had left his phone and stuff. So he was innocently trying to go get that, and then obviously he overheard the stuff, and it is hurtful. Like if you hear something that you weren't supposed to hear, or like something that was said behind your back, it is hurtful. Like if I heard that, I would be hurt. Like it's
And Buck is
understandable.
Yeah.
he's already struggling with abandonment. Like he's already struggling. I can't blame him for being hurt. Also, I will say, and again, this is not me hating on Eddie in any way. We know I love him, but I'm also going to be realistic. It's the fact that in their relationship, like Buck is much more about he's the one that really shows up. He's the one that shows up for support. He is the one that has done so much stuff for Eddie, for Christopher. Like we have seen him put out in forms of support over and over and over again. And we know Eddie sees him as his best friend. We know Eddie loves him as well, but we don't see Eddie do the same things. Like we don't see like him nearly go out and same like acts of service, which is really we all know that's Buck's love language is acts of service.
Right.
And that again, this is not me
Yeah.
talking about Buddy. This is me talking about just friendships. Love languages do play into friendships as well. And so like that is both for giving and receiving. That's his love language. So he is just giving and giving so much. And I like not in a way that like invalidates their relation like their friendship at all, but he doesn't get back the same energy from a lot of people. And I think that just like I would also feel a little bit hurt because I'd be like, it's not in a matter of like keeping a list, keeping track or record of everything you give. But after a while, when you know you're a giving person, as someone who is a giving person, when someone just completely like seems to completely forget everything you've ever done for them and does not seem to value your relationship to the degree that you are, you're hurt. And I maybe I'm reading into the scene a little much, but I'm just thinking about like their entire friendship over the series. And I'm like, if I was in Buck's position, I might have been more mad, honestly. Um, no, I maybe just relating to Buck a little bit too much in this episode. But I don't know. I was just there like, okay, I get it. I get why he's hurt. And I get why he's more hurt by that comment. I don't think Eddie meant maliciously, but I
Yeah.
do think I do just generally think that was a little cold. Now who knows what he would have done if Buck was actually in the room.
Right.
Like if he knew Buck was in the room, but still, like I get it.
Yeah. I know I have more to share, but I'm gonna share it at the end of the other scene just because I'm actually living this situation right now. So
Oh yeah, so let's get to that other scene. So then we move on. We're into the firehouse. Eddie shows up shift and he's like, I know that pooch. And Buck has the beagle. And we find that Buck rescued him, literally. And I knew it. I knew it from the second I
I
saw
knew that something
Buck
like that was
bodying
gonna happen.
this.
I had
I knew it.
seen the pictures, and
yeah, I know.
from the pictures, I was kind of curious because it was like, I was like, oh, the dog's here. So I was like, either the 118. I would have loved if they did a storyline like this. Like, if they like more of the dogs had shown up at the firehouse and they did like the 118 tried to get them adopted off. Like I would have
Oh my
lived
God, that would have been
that
for
would've
so
that.
cute.
Oh, what a good idea.
I would
Oh,
love.
I'm kind of hoping they do that in one of the next episodes because of other stuff that happens in here. Maybe we could get that. That'd be so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if it doesn't happen anytime soon, if something like that happened again, I would love that. But like, so I wasn't sure like where we were going with this, so I was just like, wait, what's happening? But then like, and when we saw the episode, when we were actually watching the episode, I was like, I will not be surprised, especially with the bond you saw that Buck had with this dog, that he was not gonna let this dog like
Yeah.
not get out. So I was just like, oh, for sure he's gonna adopt him or like foster him or anything like that. So I was just like very pleased at this moment with I was like, oh, this is so fitting, especially for Buck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm happy about it because it's like, give Buck a dog.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
he could
literally.
use
Yeah.
like the loyal companionship. Like he could use that. He's lonely.
Right.
So I'm fully supportive of this. And Eddie's, obviously he's surprised. And Buck's like, what? Do I have to run everything by you now? And
Oh,
Bobby's
that
like,
was a burn.
yeah,
He's in his
Yeah.
mood right now, and I get it. He has every right to feel upset.
yeah. Yeah. I don't necessarily agree with everything he does in this scene, but I understand everything.
I
And
understand
I
the
don't know
feelings.
that I would be better, honestly.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Half the reason I'm not more like Buck is because I'm just too much of a coward to say how I feel.
Yeah.
But if I had just a little bit more bravery, just speak my mind like that, but also not speak my mind, I would maybe be a little bit like
Yeah, and it's the heat of the moment. Like he's feeling feelings. Not only is he still dealing with a breakup, but he's also like his best friend's moving. So it's a
I think he
tough
just
time
feels
for him.
betrayed. I think he
Yeah.
just feels betrayed. And
He's
also, like we're
yeah.
seeing, I think at this scene of like him being like, "What do I have to run everything by you?" is also a little bit of a dig at the fact that like Eddie didn't necessarily like he didn't tell him he was moving out of his own free will. He also only told him about the house once we already put a down payment on it. Like he's being
Yeah.
very selectively let into these things, which Eddie is fully entitled to his privacy, but also I also understand. Like I get where that dig came So Bobby's like, well, you need to run by me, especially if you're going to be bringing them around the house. And Buck's like, well, every firehouse needs a dog. And Bobby's like, if it was the early 1900s and it was a Dalmatian.
Right.
And Jim's like, well, why did firehouses have Dalmatians? And Hen is like, oh, to calm the horses that pulled the rig. And Jim was like, this dog will calm Buck.
I love that line so much
Yeah,
because
that was a
it's
good
so true.
I'm like, yeah, it's true.
I personally feel like, I mean, with everything that Buck has gone through, he needs to have a pet, or, and not so much like a service animal, but there's emotional support pets. And like, I think that would be something he might need to consider in the future, because he's been through so much and he needs that like companionship that unfortunately he's had a lot of people abandon him. And pets don't do, I mean, granted, pets unfortunately don't live as long as a human does. So those are, you'll have
I
to
mean, if you
deal
got a
with.
parrot or an elephant, but like that's
Yeah,
beside the point.
I
Not
don't see
desirable.
Buck with a parrot though.
No, I don't see him as a bird person.
No,
No.
I definitely see him
He's
as a
very
dog.
much a dog person. Yeah. I feel like the cat aloofness, like I love cats, but I feel like cat aloofness is not him. I could see Eddie with
Yeah.
a cat, maybe.
Yeah.
But like less Buck. He's definitely a dog person.
I definitely see him as a dog person. I just, not even just energy wise, but I just feel like he'd be matched with a dog way better.
And also, like you said, emotional support. And I'm like, well, if they ever decided to actually delve into the fact that all these characters have PTSD for damn sure, especially Buck, like that could also be a service dog at some point.
Yeah.
Like it really depends. I'm think of that. I'm surprised we don't delve a little bit more into PTSD in the show, but okay. Considering that all of them have it for damn sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very complicated storyline, especially with,
Active duty firefighters.
well, not even that. I actually know of somebody that did. I don't know what, if it was a service dog or if something else, but they did end up getting one because of PTSD from that. But it, like, just in general, that realm of things is kind of complicated to do a storyline on, just because like
Yeah.
it's like it's like service dogs and ESAs are very different roles, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
especially psychiatric ways. Like,
Right.
they're not necessarily always recognized as a service dog, but they are as an ESA. So it's just a very
Like
complicated thing to tell.
ESAs are not protected by the same laws that service dogs are, and they
Right.
shouldn't be. I'm not
Right.
discounting ESAs as a very legitimate thing, but service dogs are extremely different. They are highly
Right.
trained. And even if like, if establishments don't allow dogs generally, you have to allow service dogs. Like that is a man thing. So
Yeah,
like there is definitely very different
Yeah. In the medical
necessities,
field,
but
yeah. Like a service animal can come into a hospital if it's deemed a service animal, but if it's an emotional support, or there's 3 different classes, and the other 2 classes don't have the same rules as service animal, which is valid and totally true, because if you're have an emotional support animal, you don't necessarily have to take them grocery shopping.
Yeah.
And people really try to skirt that rule a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We have service animals come into the restaurant a fair amount, and we generally we try to give them just a little bit more space, as in like making sure that the table can, like, the dog can lay comfortably under the table, that
Right.
it's not super crammed if we can manage it, because
Yeah.
you're gonna have to get out with the dog, and also in case people are gonna be assholes and complain about the dog being there.
Right.
But like we're not separating them because they're a service dog. We're doing that more for, let's just give them a little bit more room.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's been fine as far as I know. There's never really been an issue with that. Anyone else who comes in with a pet, hey man, you gotta sit outside. Sorry. And you know what? People have sat outside in 30-degree weather because they brought their dog in with them. And it's like, okay, that's your choice. But anyway, all that aside, at the very least, but Buck needs a dog. This is the episode of tangents. Wow. It usually is when I'm doing this, but okay. All right. Let me see. Oh yeah. So By the way, the dog is named Blaze, which naturally.
Seems fitting on many levels.
Of course.
And Buck is making comments about how he won't bring him in every day. He just doesn't want him to think he's an abandoner. As he looks at Eddie, which the slight on Eddie aside, that is valid if he's a new rescue. But it's also okay, that is also a stinging comment, but he is sort of saying how he feels. And he's like, I thought your landlord didn't allow pets, and Buck's like, oh, he can. And he's like, well, what if it's a problem? And Buck's like, if it is, he'll move. And he's like, you're gonna move for a dog? And Buck makes a comment about how Eddie isn't the only one who can move.
Yep. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Buck was right in saying this because it's not his to tell. It wasn't his to tell. It's not right of him to have done it, but also I get it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they should have had this fight away from the rest of people.
Yeah.
We knew it was gonna come to this. I knew that it was gonna come out, especially when Eddie was like to Buck, well, just don't tell anybody. We knew that it was gonna come out like this, and we just, even with Buck's past, we know how sometimes he can say things in the heat of moment, but that, we're all human. I've done that before.
He doesn't always think before he speaks, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, he's human. We're all human.
Yeah.
So obviously that gets everyone's attention because literally everyone else is standing around, and Eddie has to tell everyone before he's ready, which is not necessarily a great thing. Bobby understands, as does everyone else. And obviously we know Buck does deep down too. We all know he loves Christopher, and he also loves Eddie, but like, he's struggling. And I think he struggled with seeing everyone else in the firehouse like accept it so readily, and I can understand, because as someone who does sometimes struggle with change, not sometimes, I often struggle with change, or am sometimes having a hard time with things, it's really difficult to see everyone else move past because you just feel very isolated in like your struggles and accepting it. And I think it's maybe he was just looking for, I think maybe in a way he was maybe just looking for support, and the fact that everyone else moved so easily like to accepting it just made him feel more alone, because at that point he's just got Maddie to go to and be like, hey,
right,
which I get it.
Yeah.
But like,
kind of see, my thing is the way I think about it is like, so Buck, when he came to LA, yes, nobody was really here. Like, he had no family here, but then of course, next season, Maddie's here, and now like they have their own sort of like family unit, because of course there's Buck and Maddie as like siblings, but then Chim's there as obviously like a brother. And then obviously we have like the extended family with the firehouse, and then obviously like we have G, and like, so Buck's kind of like, they have like their own family unit there, where Eddie's family isn't all in Texas. So
yeah,
as to what happens with that, like, I do have sort of like thoughts about that towards the end, but like, Eddie doesn't have his family here. Like, yes, there's the firehouse family, like the extended family, but like Buck has like the support in LA, where Eddie, yes, he does with the firehouse, but the rest of his family's in Texas, and like there's nothing more than like missing your family and just wanting to be with them. So like, I get like both things, but it's just like, that was kind of my thought process.
yeah, for sure. And I will also say that I know, as far as we know, this is not at all a permanent thing. But I will say, as much as I do want Eddie to stay on the show, it kind of makes sense if he stayed there. And I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with the storyline.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't know. I'm very curious.
Yeah, I think like Eddie, I am currently living in a city that literally has no family ties for me. It's friends and, church friends and family and, like that, but not biological family. And where I was living, I don't have any ties there really anymore either. So I totally understand where Eddie is. You know, if I, you know, had a, you know, kids, or, you know, I have aunts and uncles that live in other parts of the US, and, you know, it would make sense for me to be closer to them. But, you know, and that all goes with my family. Like, and Eddie grew up in a family that seemed very close, and his dad was gone a lot, but him and his sisters and his mom were there. So it seems like they all kind of land back in El Paso area. So I think, yeah, I'm curious. I know there's been some different interviews with Ryan, and he's mentioned things like he's talked with Tim about, and I'm curious what they are going to do with this situation in the storyline. Because I don't know if Eddie would be able to be a firefighter in El Paso. He would probably have to go through the same training and stuff that he did in LA to become a firefighter in another state. So those are always things like, what's he going to do for work?
He's not a probie anymore. He's
Sure.
been an established firefighter for a while, so he could probably transfer with like
Possibly
minimal training.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I'm thinking.
That's what they did in Lone Stars. So yeah, it's very possible.
Yeah, he probably would just have to be brought up to date on like El Paso or Texas specific laws and regulations, because there are definitely differences between Texas and California.
Right. As we learned,
Yeah.
you know,
because
Lone Star, we learned the whole like paramedic and firefighter are two separate
yeah, that's what I
entities.
was gonna say. Because if we're thinking about like transferring, like obviously we got that with Lone Star with TK and Owen being from a different state, and then they probably, well, like specifically for TK, they probably just learned like or did something with like Texas or whatever, so that way they were up to date because they're very different, and you know different states operate differently with their
Marjan,
protocols.
Paul, they
Yeah,
also both
Marjan and Paul
transferred.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true.
they all transfer from different states. So it's definitely doable, but I
Yeah.
imagine probably would need a little bit of training, or just like
Mhm.
probably testing for specific certification. That's what I'm kind of guessing, is you just have to pass the
Yeah.
test.
And in season 2
Yeah.
Lone Star, we see TK, you know, when he did that, he's like, I kept both my certifications up to date. So he's like, he could be a paramedic. So yeah. I don't know. I was just thinking, like, you know, what is Eddie going to do for work? Is he going to go and pursue being a firefighter there? Or what is that going to look like? So, you know, I think
I was very curious because I just realized they didn't say that. Like, what they
there was
didn't
no
say.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's just like leaving, and I'm like, okay, so what are you doing for work? So that's my thing. Like, if you're gonna go to a new place, even if it's a place that you have family, like, what are you gonna do for work? Because you can't just go back and live with family, because we know he's not, because he put a down payment on a place. So,
But
I
also the
know.
fact that he put a down payment, that implies that he's actually buying a house, not renting, which is a lot more permanent than he's got in LA. So I know I'm very, very confused and very curious on what's happening. Yeah, that is my permanent state of being this entire
Right? I know, right? And we're
storyline.
like halfway through the discussion of the episode.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. So Athena shows up to this motel looking for the guy Richard. And the girlfriend says that he doesn't care anymore. She doesn't want to talk to Athena, but Athena convinces her to for a payback, which real. Which I'm just gonna say, like, this girl kicked him out because he was eyeballing the like 15-year-old girls down the thing. I'm like, hell yeah, that's what you do. You kick him out. And also, if there's something to report it. But like, unfortunately, just eyeballing is not really a reportable thing. The police aren't going to do anything about it. Anyway, moving on. But Athena asks if she recognizes the girl. I think her name's Jaina. And she doesn't know, maybe. And Athena tells her that she needs to find him. And so SWAT shows up to the place where they think he is. We all
love a good
scene.
SWAT call. I love when they do SWAT scenes.
Of course, now that I'm watching SWAT, I'm like, where's Hondo?
Where's Hondo?
I was like,
where's Hondo? Where's
Rock? Tony Squad? Where's Rocker?
I mean, oh my gosh.
That would be a hilarious crossover, actually.
God, I
50
wish.
Squad responding to something the 118 is dead.
Oh my God. We could get Rocker and Tommy twins for real. Anyway, you can tell we're deep in fan fiction here. But I'm just saying they could. Could. I'd be here for it.
No.
That'd probably be one of my favorite episodes to ever exist. Anywho, so love a good SWAT scene. Richard left in a hurry. He didn't even finish his sandwich. They find blood and like ties on a chair and the girl Jano's wallet. Athena radios that it looks like he took Jano with him. So the guy calls back again. I was not expecting that actually. And Maddie tells him that she knows his name's Richard, and Maddie gets an address, but Josh thinks it could be spoofed again. Sue does say that she's not taking any chances and sends some units anyway, which, as you should. And Maddie's talking with him, and he's talking about making it stop, and obviously they're trying for him not to hurt this girl. And Maddie tells him that he can make it stop and that he can end it, and he did by shooting himself, which is, I think, generally what she was implying without really even thinking about it. That is like, I was like, oh, that's what she's implying, and yep, that's what happened.
Yeah, it was a very tough scene to watch. Like,
Right.
I don't even know, but like it was very tough because it was just like obviously she doesn't want to be saying this, and no, she wasn't like verbatim being like this, but like yeah, it was like it was there, but like
it was like you've got it in your hand kind of deal, where I was like, oh,
right.
that's what she's saying. And you know what? I'm not mad about it.
Oh, I'm not either.
I'm not.
It was tough. Like this
It's
man,
difficult to reconcile.
yeah,
Like for her.
Yeah, you'll always live with that you potentially pushed somebody to something. Yeah, that's why it was like it was definitely a hard call for her, and this man was a monster, and you know she in the end she did I have complicated feelings on it, but in the end she did potentially save future victims from this man not being out there to hurt more girls.
I don't abide by any sort of child predators. So am I mad that he's dead? Nope. He was a registered sex offender. I don't give a shit.
Agree.
Is it hard to see a scene where like someone's like actively encouraging suicide? Yes, but also the only real other option at the time, because they especially thought that the address is spoofed, they didn't think we're going to find her. The other option was so much worse. It involved the death of an innocent. So
Right.
I'm not mad.
Yeah.
I understand
I
Maddie
agree.
would have difficulties with it because she is a kind-hearted person. But I think overall she did make the best call in that situation. And you also never know what you're going to do until you are in that situation. So I know I get that she's going to have issues with it, but yeah. So Athena tells Maddie that LAPD is on scene, and he is down, self-inflicted gunshot, and she finds Jaina in a closet alive. So he was not spoofing the address. Which, is good because even if the, he'd killed himself, sure. That would have been good if he had spoofed the address, but who knows if they would have found Jaina in time.
Right.
So, it is good that they were able to be there. And Maddie, of course she's upset and being like, oh, they could have stopped him if I just waited a few more minutes. And Sue is like, well, they didn't have to because she did. So then you move on to Athena and Maddie with the detective. And they find out that Jaina didn't have any serious injuries, but they are still checking her out in the hospital. The detective says that the emotional wounds will take time to heal, but she will heal. Athena is telling Maddie that this is the best case scenario they could have hoped for. And Maddie is struggling with this and says how she is supposed to be a lifeline for people on those calls. But instead, she convinced him to kill himself. And Maddie thinks if she had just waited 2 more minutes, but Athena tells her that there was no reason for them to think Athena would be walking through that door because he spoofed the other calls. And Maddie is like, why didn't he this time? And the detective says, well, he wants to be stopped, and it was going to be the end either way. And as we were saying, we feel for Maddie. Like, that just sucks. But the detective shows her a file that they aren't sharing with the public, but they found all these trophies from these other girls he abducted. And Athena tells Maddie that she stopped a monster. And Athena tells Maddie to go home and hug her little girl tight and pour herself a nice big glass of scotch. But, I forgot this at the time, but we do know that she's pregnant, so that's not happening.
Yeah.
I will say that I am curious why they wouldn't share it with the public, because I would imagine the public could come together to figure out who some of those trophies belong to. Like if family members of missing girls were watching, they could be like, "Oh, wait, that is
Yeah.
Rachel's watch," let's say.
Right.
I feel like
But it
some
also could
information.
necessarily.
Yeah, I just feel like some information they don't share with the public just because it could
Oh, yeah,
cause
absolutely.
way more harm. Like there are some things that they just, especially with like some of these girls were I think minors, so like they can't
Yeah,
really
true.
share this type of thing with the public. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
sure like the
Yeah.
families were probably shown some of the stuff or will be, but
and
like
and
this
and
is
they're
just
probably going
not
to go through
something you
their
want out
missing
there.
files too. They're probably
Right.
going through
Yeah.
their missing files too and go from there. Yeah, that is a good point about them being minors too. I didn't necessarily think about that.
Right.
I do hope that they are able to find. And I'm curious because this definitely isn't the end of this particular storyline, just because of how everything is set up later. So I'm very curious to see how else they are going to do this.
Yeah.
So then we go back to Buck and Blaze. And Buck is teaching him tricks, and Eddie comes up from behind saying, teaching him everything you know. And Buck says he knows how to stay, unlike some people.
Oh.
It's kind
Oof,
of like I
okay.
love like the comments, but also it's just like hurtful at the same time. It's like, oh, I hate that we're here, but like I kind of
Right.
just for like I don't know, for those purpose, I'm just like, ooh.
He's a petty bitch and I love him, but also
Yeah,
like
yeah, that's
just talk
exactly.
to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about our feelings there.
And Eddie asks, if he has something to say, and Buck says, "No, not really." And he's like, "Oh, so you only like speak up when Cap's around?"
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So Buck's like, "Oh, Eddie only likes to speak up behind his back," and Buck tells Eddie that he heard what Buck said. Buck tells Eddie that he heard what Eddie said to those renters. And Eddie asks, what he's talking about. And Buck explains, Elliot was the job opportunity. I don't have any ties here. Everything that matters is in Texas. And he's like, "You were spying?" Which I'm just going to say, if my best friend said something like that, I would immediately be more like, "No, man, I didn't mean that."
Right.
I don't know. Again, Eddie
Yeah,
likes his privacy, but I didn't necessarily love
not
how that
wrong.
was. But that could have been a little better.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, um, and Buck's like, "Well, I don't need Eddie either because he has Blaze." But then Blaze runs to these people. And his name is actually Bingo, and they find out that this is their dog that got spooked by fireworks. And Bobby explains that
Ugh.
a lot of animals get
Yeah.
separated because of fireworks, which is true.
Right.
I know that like literally tugs at your heartstrings because like fireworks. I'm just like this is why they say when like there's gonna be fireworks out to
Mhm.
like keep your animals inside in like a different room and not like put the TV on for them or put music on for them or something because
So
so
white
many
noise.
animals literally get out during these times and yeah, oh, so sad.
Like our old dog used to hide in the shower and shake during
Yeah.
thunderstorms as well, but for
Hmm.
fireworks. So yeah, like, and I forgotten about the lost dog poster until this moment. So I forgot that like Blaze or Bingo would have people looking for him. So obviously we love seeing them
Right.
reunited, but basically seeing Buck have to give up like this dog he's clearly
Yeah.
grown an attachment to just hurt. And he says bye to him, tells him not to go running off on his people because you have no idea how hard it is on them. And yeah. Um
It was a very like touching scene, and
Yeah.
it got me, and like, but he did say some things that at least I think showed he was processing what's going on with,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and then of course the bells go off and they have to go. And then this next scene, I have
I
feelings about this
cried.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't cry during this scene. I have conflicted feelings on it, but it is quite a scene. So Buck shows up at Eddie's, and Eddie tells Buck, it's not the time. He has a renter showing up, and Eddie says how Buck always makes it about him. And Buck says, that's what it seems like. And Buck's like, it's like that every time. I'm like, okay, well, say how you really feel, I suppose. And Buck explains, how he was trying to be supportive. And Buck's like, I didn't mean out you in front of Cap. And Eddie explains how he did because Buck acted like he always does. But Eddie tells Buck that if he needs to be pissed off at Eddie to make it easier, then be pissed off. And Buck says how he wasn't pissed off. And Eddie doesn't buy it, but Buck just says how he was, but he just didn't know. And he guesses he's having more trouble with dealing with the thought of Eddie not being around than he likes to admit. I think my main issue with this entire scene is just the way Eddie is seeing Buck, maybe. Like he's seeing him as being selfish and demanding rather than hurt and abandoned. And I'm like, that is a choice that you chose. Okay. And I'm also not ever been a fan of people like the whole Buck making about himself scene because there's a lot of cause and effect there. So I wasn't pleased necessarily. But Eddie goes on to say, like, he doesn't like any more than Buck, but if he makes this a thing of picking between Buck and his son, he's going to lose every time. Buck says, of course, it's not even a question. And then there's a knock. Eddie says it's the renter now, but it's 118.
Mhm.
And they show up to take Eddie for dinner, for his goodbye dinner. And Eddie says how he's waiting for his renter, and tonight isn't the right time. And Chip's like, oh, you still haven't told him. And Eddie's like, told me what?
Poor Eddie. He's like,
Eddie looks like he's about to like have an aneurysm or something over all this stress. Like this is not a great
what is going
time.
on here?
Literally,
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah. And Buck spills, and he's like, he replied to Eddie's listing with a fake name, and he is Eddie's renter. And he gave him notice with the loft this morning. And now Eddie doesn't need to worry. And Eddie's like, you really did that for me. And Buck is like, yeah, for you and Christopher. Buck has a couple of conditions, and Eddie's like, let's hear them. Buck tells Eddie that he needs to look the other way when it comes to his credit score.
That was good.
So funny.
Yeah. And he tells Eddie that he might want to adopt another pet down the line. And Eddie's like, well, you did bond with that dog in 10 seconds. And Buck's like, well, that's kind of what he does. And he's like, he's sorry that he had to give him back. And Buck isn't. When Blaze jumped in her arms, he wasn't sad. He was happy because he was going where he belongs. And that's why Buck is happy for Eddie, because he's going back to where he belongs with Christopher. And they hug things out. Bobby tells Eddie not to forget his wallet because this is a 118 tradition for him to pay for his goodbye dinner.
Like, I have to pay.
That was so funny though,
Yeah.
because like it's like what I have to buy. It's like the equivalent of having to like pay for your own birthday dinner or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's already thinking about knocking down the wall, and it hasn't even left the state yet. And he's like, keep walking, Buckley.
I love that line.
That was so cute. It was so the two of them. And so I've known one of my best friends for 10 years, and we were roommates in Tacoma, the west side of the state. And then I moved, we were roommates for a while, and then we weren't roommates. And then she moved back to the east side of the state. And then I moved over here about 2.5 years ago to help her out. And 5 years ago, we thought she was going to die. Her health was really poor, but she's drastically improved her life. She's actually now engaged, and she's getting married, and she's moving to Vegas. And I'm struggling with that a little bit. So I totally understand where Buck is, but she's moving because she's happy. And, I don't want to hold her back, which is like when Buck was starting to talk about like how I know you will always pick Christopher first, and you should, and I know you're going to where you need to be. And so it really caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, Eddie and Buck are kind of dealing with the same thing as like me and my friend, because her and I have done so much together. We've done road trips together, we've done lots of events. We're constantly together. Everybody calls us two peas in a pod. We joke that we're like the odd couple because we have such different personalities. But just seeing Buck and Eddie talking about this, especially, yeah, I just, so I got all choked up. Like, I think it kind of hit me like this is like me and my friend, and I was like, oh gosh, what am I going to be? So, because this is happening in like 2 months, so I'm like, this is soon. And I think at the beginning I was really hesitant because I was being the protective little sister. And I was like, no, this guy's not good enough for you and stuff. But as I've like slowly like, fine, he's okay. Like I'm more okay with her leaving. Um, but yeah, I just, so this scene got me for that, but also seeing like, I mean, honestly, I feel like this storyline just like fell out of like a fan fiction. Like I'm sure there's something on there because like, and if there's not, there's probably gonna be 50 by like tomorrow. But, no, I feel like Buck. I'm glad Buck acknowledged that Eddie needed to be with Christopher, and I think that they're gonna have to talk regarding how Eddie said that. And but I also feel like don't, because Buck took a big step. Like he doesn't want Eddie to worry. So it's like, I'll just rent your place, which I think is a little weird. But
Yeah.
it's very Buck.
Yeah. See, I don't feel that about it. Like, I think it makes total sense. I I think I had seen something like this coming for not like necessarily in this season, but I don't know. I kind of was like, oh, like maybe this is gonna happen for like several seasons. And honestly, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I feel like they were trying to like kind of like move Buck out of the lot for a while. They just didn't know how
Yeah,
to necessarily
that
get
too.
I can
there.
only imagine the cheers of people that have hated the loft this entire time. I've always loved it, so
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay. But
It's an
feel
interesting
like
space for sure.
people have
I
been wanting it to burn down for years.
yeah, there's
Wasn't
that
there
too.
like rumors last season that that was gonna happen? And so
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
it was
that's,
because of the fire at Bobby and Athena's, and everyone
oh
was
yeah,
like,
okay.
Yeah,
"Oh, then it's going to be the law,"
people thought
and
it
got
was
really upset that it
loft
wasn't.
kind of thing. I feel like the loft made sense in the time when obviously Buck, that's where he moved and stuff. It made sense then, like in season 2, but I feel like now he's kind of outgrown that space in a sense where the
Yeah,
point he is in his life. So I feel
yeah,
like him moving is almost like just in his like where he is now.
right.
So I feel like
And
it makes sense that he's not gonna be there in
Oh yeah, no,
it's
yeah,
gonna
I
be
totally feel that.
interesting for like because hypothetically Eddie's going to come back. I think we all know that deep down. And it's
Mm.
gonna be interesting when Eddie comes back and it's like gonna have to be
well, where the
like
fuck is it gonna live?
Buck's probably gonna be
Like,
staying there for a while, I think.
yeah.
Even with Eddie home.
Unless my dreams come true and he and Tommy get back together, and then maybe he'll move in with Tommy at the end of the the lease. But that's my dream.
Right.
I think I've nailed down my problem with this scene. And there's a lot I love about the scene. For one thing, is just Buck continues to, be a really great friend, a really great person. He's taking over the lease because,
Right.
having subletters, having renters comes with problems.
Yeah.
And so this could either their friendship or, even be better. But he's basically holding down the fort. And I loved it. I love seeing 118 bonding. I think my main issue with this entire scene is that once again, there just shows to be a tendency of a willingness to see Buck as like the worst, like a willingness to see like the wrong side of what Buck is saying
Yeah.
instead of willing to see where he's coming from.
Right.
And this is a theme.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an Eddie theme. It is a theme across the entire 118, even a theme with Maddie a little bit. They're so willing to harp on about his abandonment issues or like his jealous tendencies, but without like realizing where it's coming from. And I'm saying this as someone who has had this happen, has had her intentions or actions deliberately misunderstood to fit someone else's narrative instead of seeing where I'm actually coming from. And so I'm really relating with Buck on this because I know how that hurts to be misunderstood. And the fact is that this has happened for so many seasons. Chim
Right.
always does this. I'm just going to say Chim has deliberately done this so many times. Eddie's done it before. Bobby, I feel like, is maybe a little less bad with it, but he also has fallen prone to it. Chen tends to be a little bit more understanding, but she still does it. Maddie does it. Everyone does it, and it annoys the fuck out of me because Buck has never. I don't think that man has had a malicious bone once in his life.
Right.
He's just traumatized. Okay, like, and I think it just bothers me that Eddie, like, okay, I will say Buck said some hurtful things to Eddie, so maybe Eddie deserved to have a clapback or two, but his was a lot more deliberately targeted at Buck's issues rather than Buck was kind of talking about his own in like a bit of a cry for help. So I found it just to be a little mean and like much more targeted than Buck's meanness was.
Right.
Like they were both having cat fight, but um Eddie came out with swords where Buck had claws. And that's where I had an issue.
Yeah.
And that's where I was like, you know what? There's a reason I skipped part of this scene was because it was just painful to watch. So there are good things about this scene that I really liked, but just that really wrecked it a little bit for me.
That's
And
true. Oh, and I forgot the whole other reason why I connected so much with it, with Buck and the Eddie situation, is I'm moving into my friend's house or her condo. So like it was like totally like us, our situation, because the people that purchased it for her have offered it to myself and my roommate. So I'll be moving back into the room that I used to have when I was living with her. So it's funny. So it's like that's kind of like another Buck and Eddie situation. Anyways, yeah, I totally agree. Like Buck has trauma that he's responding with, and a lot of people are not catching on. And I know he was seeing that counselor for a while, but I just really wish he would go back because I
Yeah, I
know he
wish
has a lot of
he
stuff
really
to
needs
work
to.
out.
not just him, but like I feel like everyone will benefit from it. Of
Right.
course. Yeah. Yeah, like the Buck and Eddie stuff was painful to watch, I will say, but it was also like relatable, even if you don't relate in that sense. Like, I know, like, in high school, like, I think, like, if I had a friend that, like, they were friends with somebody else, or like I felt like they're prioritizing like our friendship over a different friendship, or
Mhm.
like they would be like, I think I should do this. And I'd be like, no, I don't think you shouldn't because I don't want to be alone, kind of thing. Because it's like nobody wants to
Mhm.
be alone. So I kind of
Yeah.
understand that and
Right.
what they're, what they're going, like what's happening with them is like very relatable and very like they're human. We all say things in the heat of moment. We all get into like these different tiffs that and it
Yeah.
eventually works itself out. It will work itself out. Obviously, we see towards this episode, like they do like quote unquote make up
Yeah.
and
I
stuff.
think maybe I think maybe I'm just curious if Buck hadn't sublet the place and therefore had done a huge fucking favor for Eddie, how
Mhm.
this would have turned out.
That's a good question.
Because Eddie was like, "Oh, it's all fun and like it's all good. It's all good because you just did a major thing for me." And but that's what Buck does. He does acts of service, and he will
Yeah.
lie down in front of a fucking train if it meant that you were less inconvenienced. So I think, I've come such a long way in my opinion of Buck. I did not like him when I first started the series
I
all that much,
know, I
and now
know.
I'm
I was
like,
thinking that too.
and now I'm siding with him over Eddie and something
I
like this.
know.
How did I get here?
I was
But
thinking about
I
that the
stand
other
by it.
day. I was just thinking about that the other day. I was thinking, man, remember how annoying I thought Buck was? Like, and now I'm like, I'm starting to like, not necessarily like, yes, relate to him, but like feel things that he feels, or be like, in this situation with a friend, I definitely felt like the other friend, or like I felt like, no, he doesn't feel like that, but I just related to that. And just, I get
Yeah.
like Buck's feelings and stuff. Like, I'm getting more of like things about Buck, not necessarily going through the
Yeah.
same things, but just in general, I'm understanding him, I guess is a good way to put it more. And
Yeah.
I'm loving that. Like I'm loving Buck.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I need, because we got threads of this before, but I need the 118. Especially, I say the 118, but also maybe Maddie a little bit, even though she does understand him probably better than anybody else.
Mhm.
I need them all to understand that, like, to some degree, they need to be there for him and being like, you do not have to play yourself open to prove yourself a worthy friend.
Right.
And I think Buck was making strides towards that at some points, but they've kind of fallen off of that a bit, and he's doing it again. So, again, I wonder how it would have happened if that's not the storyline that happened. And so I'm just like, there's stuff I loved about the scene, but there's also stuff I have a major gripe with. So, yeah, that's a scene. That was a scene, but it turned out, I suppose. It turned out. So now we get to our last scene. Maddie is reading to G. And so she's reading to G before bed, and then she leaves the room. She's washing dishes. You hear the door open, and someone walks in, and we know. But Maddie thinks it's Chim. She hasn't turned around. And she's like, oh, you're early. I wanted to hear about Eddie's dinner. And then she gets basically knocked out. She's not fully unconscious yet. And it's the fucking detective. And that, you know what? I had one wild theory, and it was not that at all. So I was just there like, wait, what?
Yeah,
What?
that kind of that did shock me. I understand it now, but it did shock me. And it's to the point when I was watching a scene that, like, so we're at the final scene, and I'm like, okay, well, we know that since it was heavily promoted, that Maddie does get taken
Mhm.
and stuff happens. So I was like waiting this whole episode to figure out what happened with that. And then once the other guy was dead, I'm like, okay, so like now what happens? And
Right.
then I was just like I was like, what the heck? And then when it happened, I was like, what the fuck, like 100 times. I was like, oh my God. I was like, damn, people were right. Because I didn't see these posts until after I watched the episode, but I saw people post like when they saw, I think it was stills of the detective being like, watch this be the person that takes Maddie. So like some people really just were
Mhm.
like putting those theories out there, being like, wait,
Right.
and
I think it's because she was the only like new woman that got
I
brought
was
into
yeah, I
things,
was
and
about to
people kept
say
thinking he was a
that.
woman.
I think
Here's the thing, is that because of how it all played out, I think considering that we never saw a thing from the kidnapper's perspective, we never saw a thing about his end of the calls, and we see that pretty often. I think we're about to find out that everything we saw in this episode is not how it seemed.
Yeah.
oh for sure.
Also,
Definitely.
I'm just gonna say this is, as far as I can tell, this has not been talked about at all. This wasn't even in our notes, but during that scene where he killed himself, he threatened G. He brought up G's name.
Yeah.
And that's what alarmed me. I was like, how the fuck does he know about G?
Right. Yeah.
And that explains it, because it was her. It
Oh,
was her.
yeah.
She looked into Maddie.
Yep. Yeah. I
That's why she got so upset, and that is
yeah.
why that she was so triggered and started like going down that particular path, which I still agree like was not necessarily the wrong thing to do. That it was because he threatened her daughter. I say in quotation marks, because I don't think that person on the phone was him at all.
And after I watched this episode, and I think I saw another video like the next day of a scene with the recording. I can actually hear the detective's voice in the recording now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like I think it's just I assumed man at first, because oftentimes it's a guy. And then obviously when the guy died, I think he was part of the problem because she was using him to be part of this storyline, and it was almost like a quid pro quo, like I'll kind of keep you under the radar if you do this for me type of thing. Like somehow she had him involved.
Yeah.
See, this reminds me of a Criminal Minds episode in
Yeah, a
particular,
couple of them.
because this one in particular, because it was a case of a child got killed, and the basically what happened was that the older brother had killed the kid. But the parents and the detective, who was a good friend of the parents, were covering it up. And the detective deliberately framed a known pedophile in the community for it, but he had never been violent before. Um, so they were like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And they eventually put piece it together. But he fully put that on the one guy. And the
Mhm.
guy was lying because he thought it would get him like a better like sentence, even though he hadn't necessarily been responsible
Right.
for that. So it was like that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Which is funny because Jennifer Love Hewitt was on Criminal Minds. Not during this
Yeah.
season,
Right.
but it was like, oh, yeah, fair enough. But so yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that made me think
Yeah.
of.
So I know that this is a two-part, like this episode and the one that's airing tonight, that day, when our show comes up
Right.
is the second part of it. So I know like this is going to be like, I don't think they're going to draw it out much further than that. But
No,
yeah, I'm
it's
definitely
supposed to only be
curious
2
to see
parts.
what direction they go with this detective and Maddie, because the whole 118 is going to be looking for her.
Yeah.
Well, Chim's gonna go into the house and find G either asleep or alone in the house crying
Well, that's what
and
they
be like,
said,
what the
that
fuck?
G is going to be the reason why they figure out Maddie's not there, because when Chim and Buck are in the kitchen, G comes out and says, Daddy, where's mommy?
Yeah, that's gonna be ooh. Um and just for the rest of this scene, the detective, oh my god, it's so weird. She's like, you're gonna be so mad at me, and then she gags Maddie, and then she says, good girl, and I'm like, ah.
Creepy.
That creeped me the right out because she's
Also,
like,
I hate that term just in general, so no matter who says
agreed,
it,
agreed. Um,
unless it's towards like a dog, but like other than that,
see, uh, I don't, I have so many feelings right now. So like the end of this, when we figure out, when we see that it's the detective, my thing was like, I kind of wish they didn't heavily promo Maddie being taken, because I think, like, yes, I was shocked of who it was when it came to the end, but like, I wish that they had not really told us that or promoted that, because I think it would have been more shocking to have seen like this happen and then be like the next episode. Like, am I still excited to see what happens and looking forward to it? Like, of course, but like, I wish that they had not like not like spoiled that for us, but like I kind of wish that that wasn't out there, because I think this would have been like even more shocking than it already was.
Yeah.
agreed, agreed. No, I can agree with that. I think that like yes, it was a huge draw because I think probably they knew that people were just a little bit disenchanted maybe a little bit with the season after the last few episodes, so maybe they were just trying to make sure people came in, which I get that.
Right.
But it would
Yeah,
have been
especially after
really
a long
cool if we didn't
time.
have, yeah. Yeah, they needed something to pull people in. But yeah.
I really like this episode. Like, when I said we're back, I really meant it. Like, this
Yeah.
is such a great episode, and I know like the next one will be just as good or even better. Um it was like after this episode aired, I was just like, what the heck? But like, I don't know. And there's been so many like just fan theories and fan like just things people have been saying. Like, a lot of people it's just funny. People are like, to me, they're like, why did she do this to Maddie? And I'm like, guys, obviously because she's psychotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some sort of like I don't know, there's gonna be some sort of like deep explanation other than she's just psychotic. But like she's also psychotic. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
think there are a
like
lot of
part of it,
layers.
of course. But
Yeah.
like, it's like, why does anybody do something like that? Well, there's a few reasons, but that's one of them.
I
And
wonder if she feels threatened because Maddie was like able to put things together that she didn't bring to the
yeah, I
table.
had started thinking
Possibly.
that, because I started like, if supposedly, because I've seen this done on shows, if supposedly like she was hunting for this guy or trying to put this guy behind bars for years, and then she was never able to do it, and then here comes Maddie, who, you know, is like able to be like, well, this is something, and is able to sort of lead them to something, and then she beats the detective to it when the detective has been at it for many years. It's just like I've seen where in shows like that they go after the people or whatever, so I'm just like it could be one of those things. I really don't
Yeah.
know. And I know a lot of people have some crazy theories. Like I've seen people say people are just trying to figure out like where she came from. And I'm like, I don't necessarily know like if she's connected to this guy. I had thought that originally when this first aired, like maybe she knew him or maybe like there was some relation there. I could see that happening. I don't necessarily think now if I think that's it. I know a lot of people are like I've seen people even to go so far to see that to say that Maddie, it's like Maddie's ex's sister, and I'm like, guys, why would this come up now? I think that's a little out there, but you know what?
Yeah, that's
I'm all for.
definitely a little out there.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me because I feel like we would have. I feel like that would have came up before. Um, yeah, people just have some crazy like thoughts, and I'm not against it. Like,
Mhm.
and I even like people are like, well, in this scene, why didn't she say she was pregnant? I'm like, probably. Do you really think that would really do anything for her? Do you think this lady's gonna be like, oh, you're pregnant, I'm not gonna try and hurt you? No, I don't think.
She's already shown inclinations towards like hurting girls. Like if that was her
Yeah,
making the threats towards G, she doesn't give a shit.
yeah,
And clearly she's connected with all this missing stuff somehow. I don't know. Yeah, no, that's also you don't want if this woman is psychotic, she's going to use your baby against you.
Right.
She is going to threaten your baby to make you comply.
Right.
That is how that happens.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I
no,
get
it's
the
best to keep that
thought.
on wraps.
I do get the thought, but I'm just like, that's not really helping the situation because, like, it's just like I know in some situations, like, if you say you're pregnant, it's like, well, if you care about your baby, then, but that's kind of how it's gonna be, like, but like,
Also,
I
I
think
do
it's
feel like
better.
that's relying a little bit too much on, oh, she's a woman. She has a maternal instinct. Not every woman has a maternal instinct.
It's true.
Agreed. Yeah, that's true. I
So,
definitely agree with
like,
that. It's just,
not into the typecasting there.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's because people so like yes, there is that general thing that like women tend to like not commit. Not to say they never do. That's not it. But women tend to not com commit like like different like crimes. Like women are more
th
gentle. Like there's that thing that women like
Stereotype.
men.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. This is
Women are
totally
not
not it.
as common for like violent crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Like,
was trying to get at.
like as far as like, let's talk about school shootings for one thing, or just shootings in general. They're men, pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
universally. There have been a couple of women, but it's largely men. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. It is a little surprising. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
just like, also under like the stereotype that women aren't abusers either, but actually it just doesn't get talked about as much.
I agree.
yeah, I
So,
think it's because people like to see women as like these warm and fuzzy nurturing people, but like not all women are like that, obviously. Not everyone
no.
has like a maternal instinct and stuff and
And also
I
I think it's willing to bring up, like, even for those that do have maternal instincts and are warm and fuzzy nurturing people, try threatening the people they care about. You're gonna get mama bear real fucking fast.
It's true.
it's true.
So like just generally don't underestimate women, guys. Especially like whether it's for them doing the right thing or the wrong thing. Don't underestimate. Don't underestimate what people are willing to do. No, you bring up good points.
Yeah. It's also me like thinking of these things and just working through it as I'm saying it too. Uh,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah. I I don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't really have like any. I'm just more interested to see what happens. I don't really. I do think the only really. It's not even really theory. The only thing I can think is like she's connected to whoever or whatever. That was like my first instinctual thing. I was like, she's got to be connected to this somehow. But like,
Hmm.
we'll obviously see. I know. It does. I don't know. It'd be rough for like, everyone, especially like Chim and Bach, because it's not the first time
Mm.
that they've had to go on a manhunt essentially for Maddie. And I'm just like, can we
Yeah.
like not do this again?
I
But this time they're
know.
gonna have like a much harder time figuring out what happened and who has her. Because last
Mm,
time it was kind of pretty obvious it was Doug.
right.
Mm. And the other time, like she went off on her own. Um,
Yeah. What I do like is that I mean it's Chim, it's Buck, it's Bobby, it's Athena, which it was back then, but it seemed very Buck at that
yeah.
time because Chim had gotten hurt,
Hmm.
you know, and I just well, and it's funny too because over Christmas holidays I watched the um movie that Jennifer and her husband did,
Oh, I did too.
and it
Oh, I
was so
forgot
cute,
about that.
which was set in the California, and Maddie's or the character that Jennifer plays, her apartment was Buck's condo.
Yeah, Buck's
Yeah.
Loft. Yeah, that was so
Or Buck's
cool.
loft, and I was
Amazing.
like, so for anybody that's upset about the loft, which Oliver has confirmed, the loft is no more. I think
Mm.
maybe whoever owned it was selling it, or the company that was renting it out is no longer doing that. So there could be a completely like legitimate reason why they had to get Buck out of the loft. Um, so they, and it might totally not be true, but I'm just like, I know that there are certain spaces that they often will rent for things like this. And so they totally could just not be available anymore. And they decided to make this situation Buck moving into Eddie's for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think like not saying that like someone can't live in an apartment all their life or live in the same apartment all their life even. But Buck is like 33 now.
Mhm.
He might just be ready to move on. Is like even if he just moves into Eddie's for a little while and then is like, "Oh, I'd actually like to look at like renting my own house."
Yeah.
Like maybe he's ready to do that.
Mhm.
We know he's gonna get a dog that has been implied. And well, not just implied, he's talking about it. I think he could use to get maybe a couple furry critters. And whether he gets back together with Tommy or has some other sort of relationship, that also will wind up in that. So, uh, I don't know. I'm interested to see. I am happy that he's moving on. I'm glad it wasn't like some sort of like absolutely awful thing that happened to his loft or something like that. He doesn't need that trauma either. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, those theories and wishes and speculations annoyed the fuck out of me. So I'm so glad it didn't happen like that. I'm just saying. I was just
Yeah.
like, shut up half the time.
And
Like,
Eddie's house gives him a place for, like you said, if he's going to adopt like a dog, it's got a yard, which his loft currently does not. Um, and
Exactly.
when he's working for 24-hour shifts, the dog needs some space.
Yeah. And also I feel like it's a little easier to like find someone who can come over and watch his dog like while he's in a 24-hour shift and be like, hey, can you like house sit for 24 hours or whatever and have them go into his house rather than get them into his apartment, depending on the security measures.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
I,
Especially if you have
sorry.
really cool neighbors, like I was kind of in that situation. Or like, because when I was a kid and like in my teenage years too, I like dog sat a lot. And like, anytime like my neighbors go away, I would just go over a couple times a day and like let the dog out, like play with her
Mm-hmm.
or and that kind of thing. Like if you have cool neighbors, like you can just be like, hey, can you just like let her out or
Yeah.
um let the dog out, like feed it, those kind of things, and like that's really all you need.
Yeah, my sister who lives in England, she and her wife have a couple of cats.
Hmm.
And cats are largely pretty self-sufficient. And
Right.
they also they have dry food that they like eat in moderation, and they'll get like wet food like once or twice a day that they'll eat all at once. So when my sister and her wife go anywhere, if it's like just for like a day or two, the cats don't need anyone to come stay with them because they can just eat dry food and they have cat flaps so they can run outside.
Right.
Like they're trained indoor outdoor cats, so they know how to take care of themselves pretty well. Um, I will say the apparently the cat flap battery broke the other day, so thankfully my sister was coming home at the time because the cats were locked out of the house. Um,
Oh gosh.
but uh, yeah, that's a fear. But it's fine now. But anyhow, but when they're gone for longer periods of time, one of their good friends comes over and just watches cat like once a day, like checks
Yeah.
in, gives them their wet food, gives them some love-ins. Um, but she's not necessarily a neighbor. It does actually take her just like a little bit to get there. But they have good friends and people that come over and watch the cats for them. So it's really nice. And it's not like my family ever went anywhere to like and like I grew up on a farm, so it's not like you could just be like, oh yeah, can the little old lady down the street come take care of the farm? No. No. So
Can you
that did not
imagine?
happen
Might
during
not
my
be possible.
that didn't happen during my childhood. I will say my dad had a medical emergency a couple of weeks ago, and fortunately, one of our neighbors was able to come help out with the farm a little bit, but it didn't work out
Right.
like how you typically think of pet sitting because I won't qualify pet sitting as watching 1,200 chickens.
Yeah, that is yeah, totally different. But yeah.
Sorry, that just occurred to me. I'm like, oh, well, that's funny anyway.
Right.
In general about this episode, I fully agree with Katie's statement. We are back. Um, I really, again, I've been a little bit more critical of episodes lately, and it really felt good to be able to sit down and just watch and just like, yeah, I had a few nitpicks, but they were about characters again, not about writing, not about anything like not about delivery of lines, not any of the technical stuff, just general character stuff, and that's how I like it generally.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, why is this person making this stupid decision? Instead of being like, why are the writers doing this? Yeah. So it's kind of nice being able to do that again. I really enjoyed this. It was nice to know that my cry meter is not in fact broken because I did sob during the rescue scene. uh,
Right.
I just wholly enjoyed this. I am very curious to see again what kind of waiting game or long game they're playing with the whole Eddie situation. I'm very curious to see, we're about to see a huge transition in Buck's life, so seeing what happens there. And of course, what the hell is about to happen with Maddie and Amber, who is the detective. um like, what's the motivation, what was actually happening behind the scenes that we did not see in this episode, because I'm ready to get my whole like perspective of everything that happened in this episode turned upside down on its head. I am here, I am sad, I'm ready for it. Uh can you
Yeah.
tell I fucking love Criminal Minds-esque episodes? Because this is what it's reminding me of.
Yeah, I love a
Even though I never
good
watched Fast and 12
mystery.
season.
I love like
I love mystery.
I love I love this kind of thing. So yeah, it will be like I already know it's gonna be so good. I'm uh feeling all the
I
things
am
because like I'm nervous about it, but I'm also really excited about it.
Yeah, I am sad, I am here, I am ready for it, and I'm gonna say I know we are just one episode into this like second half of the season, but already I just have so much hope for this half, seeing as I just had such varying feelings about the first one. So
Yeah.
I am ready for it. I am really excited to see what they're going to do. Um, and honestly, I have no real predictions. I'm just here and ready to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. It was a great episode. I think it coming back from the break, the hiatus, I think is a really good first start. I'm excited to see where the rest of the season goes. I know there's been some talk of some different things that they're talking about, like the crossover we've talked about a couple times. Eddie for sure moving to El Paso or going to El Paso. The permanency of that we don't know. I know Ryan has talked like maybe Eddie's parents decide to move to Los Angeles.
I had thought that too.
Yeah, so there
Like,
was
That would be an experience.
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it
that
would
would probably
be
involve Abuela also moving back because I think she just moved
Possibly.
there to be with her son.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
So,
she's older and it's harder being alone. I think was like the thing too. Like it was just way too hard for her. But yeah, I had thought about them like because Eddie's dad's retired.
right.
So, like,
Yeah.
and
Mom was
you a
a
lot of
hunter.
times see that or hear about that, like people moving towards a lot of people in retirement, their kids move away when they obviously grow up. Um, then a lot of times they'll move wherever their kids are. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
hold it out, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think that I necessarily think that's what's going to happen. I would be very curious to see what kind of dynamics are going to be there. Um, because Eddie's on better terms with his parents now than he was in earlier seasons, but I still wouldn't say it's necessarily the I want to live near my parents, except my son is also living there, so I guess I'm gonna go live near them. But I think he would be perfectly happy keeping that couple state distance.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I think it
Yeah.
would only happen for Chris.
Yeah.
well, see, I also wonder. Um, yeah, I also wonder, would they also want to leave their daughters? Because remember, Sophia and Adriana, they also presumably, I think, in Texas. Um, I think that's what we've heard. We've barely seen them, so I'm like, would they also want to leave behind their other children? Like, I don't know. I'd be very curious to see what happens, but I honestly I don't know how this whole thing is going to resolve with Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if we're even going to see any content with Eddie in El Paso. Like, I don't know if Ryan's just taking a break from filming for a little while or what's happening there. Maybe he needs to go spend some time with his kids. Maybe that's like, maybe we don't know what's happening in his life.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think there are just a lot of options.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of options. And I think having his parents move to LA would be a big, like, it would be an interesting step, but we don't know where Chris is at. We don't know how Chris is going to feel about his dad moving. I don't know if Eddie has even really included him in any of those conversations.
Yeah, that too. I brought that up last podcast.
Yeah.
I know.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, so does Chris even know you're coming? And when he sees the U-Haul, like, is he gonna know? Like, he'll know, like, what's going on? And I don't know. I feel like his Chris is definitely at an age where he's not far from graduating high school and doing his own thing. He's growing up, and Eddie's parents, you're right. Like, he definitely is retired, and the vibe I got was that his mom was a homemaker. So there's really no like need for them to stay in El Paso except to be closer to their daughters. But we also don't know where their like Eddie's sisters live.
Yeah.
They've never really talked specifically about it because I even remember in the first episode when Eddie was showing the pictures that had been taken of him for the calendar, and they're like, yeah, well, that you're not supposed to have a professional photo. And it actually, he's like, yeah, these were taken by my like 14-year-old niece, which the only way to be a
Yeah.
niece is to be the daughter of a sibling. So we don't know where his sisters live.
Yeah, there's that too.
So yeah, no, I'm excited to see where they're going with the Maddie storyline and her pregnancy. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do with Buck now that Eddie is moving for temporarily, possibly, or what that's gonna look like. Obviously, I definitely don't see Eddie going to 911 Nashville. So I don't see that happening at all. Like, that's not gonna happen. And I do think eventually Eddie will come back to the 118. I do.
I do agree. I did see like an article where Ryan had said it was an interesting quote because Ryan had said something along the lines of like, if this was the end of Eddie's journey, I would accept it. But like I also see so many years more of Eddie. But if this had been the end of the journey, like I would be okay with it.
Right.
But then I've also heard Tim say that like, this is not like the end.
Right.
We're just,
Yeah.
exploring like this storyline and
And
stuff.
I've watched other series where we've had characters move away and they're in the show just as much as they were, when they were in the same town for a short time. And they do it on Grey's Anatomy all the time.
I know. Okay, I do have something to say about that because the actress that played the detective was in Grey's Anatomy, and the whole freaking time I was
Yeah.
like, "Why does she look so familiar?"
Yeah,
So of
me
course,
too.
after this aired, I was like looking up IMDb. I'm like, "Okay, yep, she was in Grey's Anatomy," and she has a different hair color, which is why I didn't notice it. Like she was a redhead in Grey's, where in this she obviously she has like very dark, like almost black hair.
Well, I recognized her from Timeless. And I was like,
Oh,
why
yeah,
do I
that's
recognize her?
I've never seen that, but I know of it. That's why.
I used to watch that. And so I was like,
But it's just everyone was making like online making Grace jokes. They were like, "Yep." Yeah, it was just funny because it was just like in Grace, she basically was one of the main characters, like sisters who in the military, she basically went like essentially missing, and she was like held captive for like 10 years, and then suddenly they find her. So people were like, well, that's what happens. And I'm just like, it was like funny, and I'm just like, it always happens like that with the people in shows. I'm just like, wait, I know this person from somewhere, I just don't know which one.
I will just say, because I found it funny. When you were talking about that, when you said Gray's jokes, I heard Grace jokes, and I went hee hee ha. This is what happens when people say something sounds like my name. I'm like, what do you mean?
You gotta do anything.
Are you saying I'm a joke? Because I am. Thank you very much. I'm really funny. Thank you for noticing. No, I have never seen Grey's Anatomy, and I don't think I've even heard of Timeless, though the name does maybe sound familiar. I don't know. Grey's Anatomy is daunting to think about getting into because what are there fucking 25 seasons at this point?
Yeah, like 21, I think.
Yeah, same difference. It's daunting enough to think about trying to get into the 8 seasons of SWAT.
Yeah, that's like me I love
I'm halfway through the
starting.
first.
It's only a problem now because I don't have that much time, and there's other things I like to be doing. So just thinking about, as much as I love to sit down for like a binge of a show, every time there's a bunch of seasons, do I really want to? Like, can I actually do this? Because like I do love it, but it's just like, it's so hard.
Yeah.
I do some crafts that I don't need to pay attention to what I'm doing because I crochet, so I can sit and I can listen to shows and I can watch kind of as I'm going. So I'll pop stuff on, but I try to watch shows that I've seen before. But yeah, I did SWAT. I finally caught up with SWAT to like current airing series shows.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I remember her in Timeless. Timeless was like she was a historian or something, and she was asked to come to this like secret government group, and because they figured out a way to travel back into time to certain eras, and I don't know, there's something they were trying to get. So she was kind of the historian that was helping them make sure they were like more like traditional, so they didn't stand out like crazy when they went back in time.
Right.
And it was only like, I think it lasted like 1 or 2 seasons, so it didn't last too long. But yeah, so why do I look like, so, and that happens. And I know it's like funny, a lot of people are like, I have a couple of friends like, yeah, I don't care. I'm like, well, I do, and so I'm telling you. But yeah, I'm off to a great 8B start, let's put it that way.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
How about the promo from someone that has watched it?
Okay.
Go Kitty.
Unless we have fan
that we
thoughts.
assign me this task because you guys know how I love my promos. Okay, so the promo starts with G coming out of like the bedroom or something like that and being like, "Daddy, where's mommy?" And Buck and Chem give them like look at each other and they're like not like confused, but like sort of confused. And then Buck says like how he's called every hospital from here to Orange County and nobody has seen her. And then we see obviously Maddie like in this strange place, like it looks like a basement of something.
Mhm.
And then Hen like is like saying how it's time to call Athena, and then Athena says how they're on their way and something is not right, and Bobby says how like like nothing about this is right, and then Maddie like says to the detective how she's supposed to save these girls, not hurt them, and then Maddie asks what she is going to do hurt to her, and the detective is holding a syringe. It says it will be painless. And then Maddie starts yelling, and she tells Maddie, like, if you yell, like, nobody's gonna hear you. Like, the room's soundproof, obviously.
Pretty
Uh,
standard. Yeah.
yeah, that's like pretty obvious there, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, like I watched this promo when I saw it, like after I watched it like at least 5 times because it's just like the look that Buck and Cham give each other, like, oh shit. Because like they just get home and then you wonder if like G had like gotten up or whatever, if she had heard anything or if she even like leaving, like heard them leaving, or if she had seen anything and like was she out there a while waiting or was she like sleeping and then like she woke up and nobody was there and then Buck and Chim get there shortly after.
Right.
It makes
Yeah.
me think so many different things and uh
I'm kind of assuming that she just slept for a while. Um,
yeah, that's what I thought too.
because like Maddie thought when she thought it was Chim, she was like, "Oh, you're early." So I'm assuming they come in probably a couple of hours later.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
imagine if G had been up all that time, she probably would be a lot more frantic about, "Daddy, where's mommy?" Like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious to see what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, especially since like being left as a child is always like super traumatizing. Um, like if you wake up and you think nobody's there, it's so
yeah,
scary. Like I was always as a kid, I had this like fear, even though it never really happened of like being left behind or being alone. Like I never wanted to be alone, even if it was like in the simplest places. Like I was always afraid. Like I always like I don't know, I just had that fear. I don't know why. I don't necessarily know why, but like even if my brother was there, I like clung to my parents if we were in a strange place.
yeah, yeah. Especially at that age, it's like the parents are still kind of everything. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Hmm.
Also, did we have any fan thoughts?
So yeah, I was gonna mention that when we got to that. I don't think we have any tips today, but obviously like we'll post like fan or we'll post asking for fan thoughts after these episodes air and obviously like share them with you guys. We like reading them. I think it's really interesting to read other perspectives and stuff. And obviously like it
Yeah,
adds like more community and everything because we can talk about these episodes until like there's nothing left. So we love
Right.
to hear more things
Yep.
and hear like just different theories and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to say like leave us your fan thoughts for all the
yeah,
rest of the episodes and stuff.
absolutely. We love hearing it.
And even after this airs, we still want to hear it. So
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, that's also part of why we have a Discord.
Yes.
yeah.
And
That's
spots for
true.
different conversations. 901 and Lone
Exactly.
Star. I should probably add some
Yeah, we
future
should start for
901
Nashville.
series stuff for Nashville and stuff. So I'll get that going here soon. It's gonna be
I
interesting.
know.
Oh, as a funny thing, I did when we earlier mentioned Nashville as far as like Eddie going, I'd forgotten that I was in Nashville, so I got basically Nashville jump scared. I was like, "What do you mean, Nash?" I had truly forgotten, but like when you said that, I was like, jump scare. Okay,
Oh
I
yeah, just kidding. That's funny.
Yeah, people do have theories, or I've seen things put out there of like character crossovers, and some of them are actually kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check out our website at 91lsroundup.com. You guys can also follow the podcast on our socials at 91LS Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. As always, be sure to join our Discord server. The link will be in the description of this podcast and also on our website.
You guys follow me, Katie, at Full of Charlos on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at Vernon Ratha 901 on Instagram and Threads.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Threads. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.